Hi, this is Alma Katsu, author. I'm going to drop the spiel. Hopefully, if you're seeing this video, you've seen the first couple. And I'll just say I'm doing these MAAs, Ask Me Anything, about what it was like to have a career in intelligence. And I'm doing this in support of my book, Red Widow, which is coming out on March 23rd. This is my first spy novel. Hopefully, it'll be the first of many. And I decided I wanted to try my hand at writing spy novels because I had a 30-year career in intelligence. I had actually a pretty varied career, pretty different from most people in intelligence. I ended up working at several intelligence agencies, CIA as well as NSA. I was an intelligence analyst for most of that time. I actually was a national intelligence officer at one point, and then ended up transitioning to technology, which is kind of how I actually started my career, but I can't go into that. Anyway, I got this one question. I asked readers to submit questions to me, and I'm drawing from those to do these videos. And I know this is one that a lot of people will be interested in. And it has to do with, how does one become a spy? The reader writes that in World War II and Cold War books, I've read it seems to be a matter of who you know. How do you get to have a career in intelligence? Well, I'm actually kind of well suited to answer this because I did a year in recruitment at CIA. I was actually the lead analyst recruiter for the Northeast. And that meant I went to colleges like Harvard and Yale and Brown and MIT and all these wonderful places to try to talk people into applying for a job at CIA. It's changed a lot. Now, when I applied in the very early 80s, it was a little bit more mysterious. And I actually came on board with a lot of people who you wouldn't think would be recruited for intelligence work. Musicians, artists. I mean, I'm a writer. There were certainly computer scientists, not a lot, because back then it was just emerging really as a field. Mathematicians, electrical engineers, all that kind of stuff, political scientists that you would expect. But for a lot of the skills that they needed, there weren't training programs in colleges, it wasn't a major, that sort of thing, the way it is today. And what I found out when I did a turn as a recruiter, and this was in about 2007, is that these days, I would have people come up and talk to me and they say, I've been planning and training for this since I was 3 years old. This was what they wanted to do. And they spent all their time studying the field, studying, if they were political scientists, for instance, their region or their area that they were interested in. They learned languages. They, went to incredible lengths. And so it's quite a bit more competitive. I can't give you specific numbers, but the year that I was a recruiter was a record year for applications. And I will tell you, it was well over 100,000 applications for, I think we had several hundred analyst jobs. Now, those 100,000 applications were not all for analysts, but it was in the tens of thousands of applications to be an analyst. So those probably sound like pretty insurmountable odds to you. Let's talk about that in a minute, but first I'll talk about the process. If you're in college, you'll have recruiters probably coming to your university. Just check with your development office and see when they're on the schedule. Or if there's a career fair, chances are there might be representatives of one or more of the agencies coming out there, and that's a great place to start. And they'll talk to you about, what kind of people they're looking for, what kind of jobs are available, and what the process is. If there's not a career fair, or let's say you're transitioning from a career, you're already in one line of work, but you'd like to get into intelligence work, the first step is to always go to the agency's website. For CIA, that's cia.gov. NSA, nsa.gov. .gov will be on the URL. And look for where it says careers. And there's probably going to be a wealth of information for you there. They'll describe the different types of positions that they're looking to hire for. They'll talk about the process. They'll give you background information. And so that's a great place to start. In the books, especially the historic ones, they really like to use that ruse, basically, you know, that somebody recognizes your innate talents as a spy and recruits you to do it. But that's kind of part of the storytelling myth. It'll happen sometimes. When I was a recruiter and I was visiting campuses, sometimes a professor might come up to you and say, you know, I have a student that I think is really promising. And all we can do, though, because there are some laws prohibiting this sort of thing, is to tell them to apply to the process just like anybody else. Now, these processes are pretty involved. Generally these days, the first step is online. You fill out all the application. You know, they'll prompt you for what kind of information. It's basically a resume, but it might tease out a little bit more information in one way or another, like, you know, have you lived abroad? What languages do you know? And then recruiters go through each and every one of those applications looking for people who have the skills that would fill the jobs that you have at the moment. And that at the moment is really important, because even though they're looking to hire on a rolling basis all the time, there might be a time where, you know, like post 9/11, we were looking for more counterterrorism analysts, say, than economic analysts. You know, you'd still have a few vacancies. So if you're not picked up right away, you know, wait 6 months and reapply, because sometimes the requirements do change. If you get it through that step and you get contacted by one of these agencies, usually there's a few more things you need to do. They're going to start with the security questions. There's a very broad, I think it's like 10 questionnaire, just to make sure you haven't done anything illegal that would prohibit you from getting a security clearance, because you absolutely have to have a security clearance. They may ask for writing samples, depending on what kind of job you're going for. If you're going to be an analyst, you have to be able to write. We need to see some promise there, if not sort of like that you're at the finish stage. Usually at a certain point, they'll invite you to come to a briefing. And I used to do these all the time. You stand up and you sort of describe what the intelligence community is about, generally what the agency is about, and then usually a security person, someone from security, sits down and talks to you about, you know, the kind of record you have to have in order to get a security clearance. There's usually interviews. There's going to be, depending on how far you get in the process, there's going to be several rounds of interviews. And then if you're very lucky, you get a job offer. And that is not the last step. If you accept the job offer, then you have to go through the formal paperwork for starting the investigative process for getting a clearance. And that can easily take a year. I think for most people, it's at least a year. And depending on how much foreign travel you have, your family, and, you know, if you have foreign nationals in your family, if you have a lot of foreign national friends, that sort of thing, it can take even longer. It's a long-term prospect trying to get a job in the intelligence community. The last thing I'll say is most agencies have student programs. That is, if you're an undergraduate or a graduate, there are programs where you can apply, get in, and we bring you in the summertime and give you some real-world experience. Sometimes you can be brought back year after year, depending, usually with grad students, depending on where you are in your program. And hopefully, if you like what you're doing and we like you, you can end up having, that can lead to a great, fulfilling career in intelligence. Well, I hope this was helpful to you. If it was, please like the video or share the video or subscribe. I would love it if you would share the link to this with your friends, if you have friends that you think would find it enjoyable, or drive your friends to the videos. That would be great. And if you want to learn more about the books, particularly Red Widow and when it comes out, I would love it if you would go to my website, which is almakatsubooks.com. And there'll be a pop-up right away that asks you to subscribe to the newsletter. And that's the best way of staying on top of all of the news. And believe me, there's going to be a lot of news coming out very shortly, some that I can't share with you yet, but it's super exciting. And there's a monthly contest, and I give away books and all that fun stuff. So I hope you like what you hear and you're ready to join me on this little adventure. Talk to you soon.